Yeah, that's maybe also the reason why my belly is growing and growing. All right, cool. Yeah, thanks for the nice introduction. As already mentioned before, I would like to talk a little bit about flight levels today. And I would like to talk about flight levels and actually what organizations are actually doing when they are doing flight levels. So it's a lot about what are companies doing, right? So, but before we start with the what, let's talk about the why actually. So why should an organization do something like flight levels in the first place? Well, I tried to summarize this in the book. It's called Rethinking Agile. And this book basically tells a story about an organization who went on an agile transformation. And the main goal in this transformation was that they wanted to improve their time to market. It just took way too long to deliver to the market, and yeah, they were quite unhappy with it because they couldn't keep up with the competitors, right? So that's the reason why they started a quite big agile transformation, actually. So what was the core solution of this agile transformation? They built cross-functional teams, and they built cross-functional product teams. I'm on the Agile tour here, so I don't think I have to talk a lot about Agile teams and cross-functional teams, right? But if you think of it, it's actually a cool idea. So they wanted to tear down all these functional silos. They wanted to get as many people as possible in just one team so that this team can deliver directly to the market. And they even put it one step further. They were like, let's build product teams as well. This means one team is only working on one product, so nothing can go wrong if you do something like this. And I think each and every Agile textbook writes about that's exactly how you need to approach agility. They started doing it, and the result was time to market was getting worse. So they really invested a lot of money and in this agility kind of thing, and the result is, the business result actually, is, of course, there were people doing stand-up meetings, they were seeing boards and everything, but the business result was that it was getting worse. It even took longer to deliver to the market than before the Agile world. And, well, they were a little bit puzzled, right? But here's the thing. What this organization was basically doing is they were like reorganizing the entire organization because they wanted to get rid of these functional silos. Functional silos are bad, right? We need cross-functionality. We need product teams and so on. That's what they did. They get rid of the functional silos, but what they did actually, they built cross-functional silos. So here's the thing. It's not so important actually how the team structure looks like here, right? It's way more important that we somehow bridge the gap between the teams. We need to somehow drill, I would say, interaction holes into these silos, right? So it's way more important that we somehow make the interactions between the teams agile than the teams itself. Don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of cross-functional teams and I'm a huge fan of agile teams. But if we only focus on agile teams, we will get cross-functional silos in the end. And that's not the result what you want to achieve. Well, and I explained this story in this book, and this was kind of the problem, right? And we were also talking about solutions in this book. And one solution was that we actually applied flight level thinking. I would like to start here now. So what does this mean, we applied flight level thinking? Because the book is more a book like for managers. There's a lot of pictures in there, not so much text, you know. So I didn't go into the details what we were actually doing, right? So that's what I'm going to do now. So what does it mean when I say, okay, we started with flight levels in this organization? Well, what is flight levels in the first place? I would not say that flight levels is something like, I don't know, agile method or maybe a framework. For me, flight levels is more like a thinking model. A thinking model which somehow helps you to figure out what are the levers that you need to pull in your organization so that you get the result that you want to get in the end. So flight levels doesn't tell you you have to do these things and then everything will be great. It's more like a thinking model. It helps you to figure out your way for your organization, right? And when organizations are starting with flight levels, what they are doing is they are incorporating 5 activities in their, they are incorporating 5 activities in their work environment, and that on 3 levels. And they build a so-called systems architecture to somehow glue the agile islands together. And that's exactly what I would like to talk about now. So what are these 5 activities? What are the 3 levels? And what does it mean? We need to glue agile islands together, right? So let's start with the 5 activities. Activity number 1, when organizations are starting with flight levels, what they are doing is they are making their situation visible, right? Visualize what's going on in the organization. I guess that's a principle in almost each and every agile method, because it's really quite hard to do any kind of improvement if you don't see what's actually going on. So the first step would be like, make your stuff visible so that you can take conscious decision when it comes to improvements. This could be a kind of visualization, what we see here. That's actually a quite extreme visualization. You don't have to be able to read it. I just want to point out some things. So what you actually see is, you see a process here, right? So they know what they are doing. There is a process. This means whenever there's a process, you haven't done it, you're not doing it the first time, because if you're doing something the first time, it's quite hard to come up with a process, right? So they are in a business where they are doing like repeating stuff, yeah? That's the reason why they have a quite strict process. And the process is even like this. When you see on each and every work, so each card here is a work item. They even have a checklist on it, where it's really like, okay, we have to do all these things. It's like flying an airplane, right? Where you really know what you're doing. At least I hope that all the pilots know what they're doing, right? So that's one way of making your work visible. This is totally great when you're working in an environment where you have a lot of knowledge about what you're doing. Not so much uncertainty, a lot of certainty actually what's going on. If you're more like in a startup universe, so you're doing most of the things the first time, this wouldn't help, right? If there's a lot of uncertainty, you would probably pick something like this as a visualization. So what we see in this visualization is totally different. We don't have a process because we are doing all the stuff the first time. We are figuring out how the market reacts and so on. So we have a pattern, what we call now, next, later. This means we have some work here in the now. This is where we're currently working on, right? Then we have some stuff what we want to have finished before Christmas, and the rest is somewhere later, right? So it's really no process, nothing. It's just like a time scale, which is somehow, organizing the stuff that we're doing. This is 2 versions of how one could visualize the situation. And this is actually 2 extreme versions. One version is really like a very high degree of certainty. We know what's going on, processes and everything. And the other thing is like startup behavior. We have no freaking clue what's going on. A lot of uncertainty, right? And of course, the world is not like black and white. There are 50 shades of gray in between, what we've heard, right? So the thing is, when an organization is doing flight levels, they are figuring out the best visualization for their context, right? But it's important that we're doing it like this, right? So organizations visualize the situation as the first activity when they're doing flight levels. The second activity is organizations are creating focus. What does it mean to create focus? Well, in the end, we want to get to a mode of working where it's more important to finish work than to start work, right? There is a nice slogan, which is like, stop starting and start finishing, right? Stop starting work, start finishing work. And if you think about it in economical terms, it totally makes sense, right? Because starting work costs money, because people have to work on it, right? finishing work brings money, because in the end, hopefully, someone is paying us something, right? So it makes more sense that we are focusing on earning money than spending money. So stop starting, start finishing is actually a quite economical way of thinking how an organization should work, right? And that's the second activity what organizations are doing. They are creating focus for the sake of a better economical outcome in the end. There are multiple ways to create focus. You probably know something like sprints, from the Scrum universe. This is time boxes. But time boxes is something like stop starting, start finishing, right? So we commit to work for 2 weeks and not more, and we finish this stuff in these 2 weeks, and then we start new work, right? This is exactly stop starting, start finishing. Work in process limits, something that's somehow popular in the Kanban universe, right? So you only start a certain amount of work, so not more than 10 projects or something like this in your company, and then you finish one, and when one is finished, you can start the next one, right? And there are multiple other ways how we can create focus, but in the end, we always want to somehow get to the thing where finishing work is more important than starting work. And if we go into this way of working, like we are creating focus, one thing is going on which is really hard to understand for most organizations. You cannot utilize your people to 100%. Because if all the people are busy working all the time, you won't get to the result that stuff is being finished faster, which doesn't sound right? Because usually when we think, okay, if all the resources are 100% utilized, everything is totally fast, right? But that's not the case. You're living in Bangkok and you have to prove each and every day what's going on in a road network which is fully utilized. This, right? So we have one big parking lot in the end, right? And if you take a look at this picture, we are not talking about 100% resource utilization. Can you see how many space is there already still left on the road? So we can still park some more cars here. But I kind of like this picture because you don't have to study flow science or whatever if you want to interpret this picture, right? If I am the car that's entering the road up there, I probably won't be able to go 200 kilometers per hour. I need to go way slower, right? So whenever we overload systems, they are slow, right? And that's the same for our work system. When we overload our work system, when we put too much work in it, work is being finished very, very slowly. And the other thing is, when I am the car entering this road up there, I have no freaking clue when I can leave this road network again. This means predictability in highly utilized systems where all the people are working all the time is just not possible. When your organization is 100% utilized, the people in your organization, you are not predictable. Full stop. It is like it is, right? There is science behind it. You can't do anything about it, unfortunately. And the same is true like for organizations. So that's the reason why I love this picture, actually, because we can easily transfer it to agile organizations. Let's assume each of these roads here is like one of these visualizations that we are doing. We are building all these boards, right? So let's assume this is a kind of Kanban board here. Here we have a Scrum board. Then back there is somewhere a safe train passing by. So this is all these visualizations that we are building in our company. And now we load them fully with work. And what a surprise, none of the work items is being finished faster. And the point here is, it's independent of the agile method that you're doing. No matter whether you are working with Scrum, with Kanban, with Safe, with Less, with Nexus, or with Waterfall, right? You won't become faster, you won't see better results if you are not able to create focus in your organization. If you're not able to create focus, stay with Waterfall. It doesn't make any difference, right? So that's something what we really need to understand, and that's actually the second activity in flight levels, that we're not only visualizing the work that's going on in an organization, we also have to create focus. If you only have a visualization, you can probably manage your dysfunctionality a little bit better, but this doesn't help, right? In the end, you won't see any improvement. Activity number 2. What are companies doing when they are doing flight levels? The third activity is they are talking to each other. So we establish interactions between the teams, and I think that's an important point. So, of course, we need to have interactions within the teams, but we also need to have interactions like communications between the teams. And we pay in, especially an effort on establishing exactly these cross-team coordinations. I will show you a little bit later how we are doing it, actually. But that's another activity in flight level. So we visualize our situation, we create focus, we establish agile interactions, especially between the teams, right? Activity number 4 is we measure progress. Measure progress is actually a cool thing to do. So one thing is doing flight levels for the sake of doing flight levels is actually quite unsexy, right? Hopefully we want to achieve something with it. If we want to, for instance, I don't know, become faster, it would be smart to measure how fast we are actually. Because if we are changing the way how we work and we are improving, this means, yes, we are on the right track, so let's do more of it. But if we don't see any improvement, well, we need to change what we are doing actually, right? And that's the idea when we talk about measurements. Measurements serve as a feedback loop. We don't measure because we can, or we have all these tools who provide these nice dashboards. We measure because we want to receive feedback if we are on the right track. Yeah? So measurement is always a feedback loop. And another thing is, when you establish a metric or a measurement, the cool thing is we find common understanding of what we actually want to do. For instance, if someone says, okay, our goal of our flight levels or agile transformation is we want to radically improve our quality. All right, perfect. How do we measure quality? There is no quality meter, right? Now we need to think about what does it actually mean? Does it mean that we don't have so many bugs in our bug tracker? Or does it mean that we don't have so many calls in the support center? This is also quality, right? So we need to get precise now. And we need to really have a common understanding what it actually means. I've seen so many organizations who have like a strategic initiative, like, I don't know, cultural transformation or so. And part of the cultural transformation is we want to become agile. Perfect. How do we measure that we are more agile in 3 months? Again, there's no agilometer, right? So, and especially agility is actually a quite nice metric or a quite nice word because it's like a balloon full of hot air, right? Everybody can project something in it. For some people, agility is like efficiency and being fast and time to market is totally fast. And for others, agility is like, we are hugging trees all the time, right? So what is it? How can we see in 3 months that we are making progress in terms of becoming more agile? And if you answer this question and set up a metric for it, you have a common understanding. And that's the reason why organizations are measuring progress when they are using flight levels in their work environment. All right, so we make our work visible, we create focus, establish agile interactions, we measure progress, and we improve, right? And improve actually means we start again and again and again from the beginning, right? So we adapt maybe our visualization, we create better focus, and so on and so on. So the thing is, when you're doing flight levels, you're never ever done. And I think that's true for all agile transformations. And agile transformation doesn't work like this. I'm now in state A, which means I'm not agile. Over there is state B, I'm agile, I'm going there, and now I'm done. Right? I never ever have to change. That's exactly not what's going on. You always run a changing system. This means you always need to adapt to reality, right? And that's the reason why yeah, basically we are going in circles when it comes to improvements. So these are the 5 activities. So organizations somehow apply these 5 activities in their work context, and the outcome most of the time is something like this. We see a visualization, right? This is a kind of board where people somehow collaborate. Maybe they create focus here. They have some interactions around it, and we see some measurements, right? This is like the outcome when you apply these 5 activities. But now there's the question, well, what does this somehow distinguish flight levels from, I don't know, Kanban, for instance? Because Kanban fits pretty much in there. Scrum also fits pretty much in there, right? Design thinking. I mean, even if you're doing design thinking, this is somehow what you're doing. Well, there's one thing. In flight levels, we do not apply these 5 activities somewhere isolated in the organization. What we are doing is we are applying these 5 activities on 3 levels in the organization. And that's actually very important. We apply it on 3 levels in the organization, and we glue these levels together to get one big thing in the end, right? So 3 levels. What are the 3 levels? Well, flight level is, of course, a term from aviation, which describes how high you are flying, right? And if you're flying on different flight levels, you see different things. If you fly very low, your vision is somehow restricted. You don't see a lot, but you see a lot of details. If you're flying very high, you see, the white in the distance, but you don't see a lot of details, right? And the same is actually true in organizations. In organizations, we can fly very low. We are flying on the team level. This is flight level 1, just around the ground, more or less, right? And the idea is that a team now is applying these 5 activities, and they are building a board like this, create focus on this board, establish agile interactions around this board, and measure the progress, right? That's what a team is doing. Most of the time, an organization has more than only one team, so we will see multiple of these flight level 1 systems in your organization. And the thing is, each of these teams, they are now starting to create these visualizations, establishing agile interactions, create focus, and so on, applying the 5 activities, right? So here's the thing. In most organizations, one team alone cannot deliver value to the market. Most of the time, if you really are working on a product or something like this, multiple teams need to be involved in order to deliver, that's the word I was looking for, to deliver value to the customer. And that's something which we can solve on flight level 2. This means we need to fly a little bit higher, right? On flight level 2, that's the coordination level, right? This means on flight level 2, we make sure that the right team is working on the right stuff at the right time, yeah? So the idea is that representatives here from the team go together, come together, and build another visualization. And they're like, okay, we always have dependencies. We need to collaborate, right? Because we are working on the same product or something like this. So let's apply as a team of teams, kind of, right? Let's apply these 5 activities and let's build another board. Let's create focus, agile interactions, and measure progress, and let's improve, right? And now we can actually coordinate across multiple teams. And that's exactly the thing, what's going on flight level 2. Flight level 2 is the world of your products and services. That's all the stuff that somehow is important to your customers, right? And the cool thing is, what we are also doing is, we are connecting flight level 2 and flight level 1. So if you make a change on flight level 2, you can see it on flight level 1 and the other way around, right? So the systems are connected. I will show you a little bit later how we are actually connecting the different flight levels. So if this is the world of your products and services, usually an organization has more than only one product or service, right? So we will see multiple flight level 2 systems popping up in our organization, right? And again, we're just applying the 5 activities on each and every product, yeah? Sometimes it's also the case, or not only sometimes, quite often actually, that we have dependencies between our products and services. Do you know this? If you change something in this product, you also have to change something in that product or in the other product, right? That's also something what you can solve on flight level 2, because we just built another flight level 2 actually, right? So the idea here is we get people from this product and this product together because they have dependencies, and they again apply the 5 activities, visualize the situation, create focus. You know the 5 activities already, right? And they build another board so that they can manage actually the dependencies and their flow across multiple products. The cool thing is we are not talking about methods here. From a standpoint of a flight level 2, we actually do not care what methods the teams are using, right? We just make sure that the right team is working on the right stuff at the right time. From the standpoint of a flight level 2, the teams could do Kanban, the teams could do Scrum, or they could just work. That's also fine, right? So we don't have to change all the teams in the first round if you're starting with your agility on flight level 2, which is actually quite nice because you can keep the change energy quite low in your organization, right? So this is the flight level 2. We can fly even a little bit higher, and this would be flight level 3. And flight level 3 is strategy. Strategy means we are trying to align the work in the organization on the strategy, and we want to make strategy happen. This means we are also connecting the flight level 3 with the flight level 2 and flight level 1 systems. And guess what we are doing on the flight level 3? Yes, correct. We again apply the 5 activities and build strategy boards, right? Visualize the situation when it comes to strategy. Makes sense, right? All right, so these are the 3 flight levels. And what you see here is that we are trying to apply this idea of visualizing the situation, creating focus, and so on, all these important things in the entire organization, and we are trying to connect all the levers together so that we really get to the point where we have enterprise agility. That's the goal when you're doing flight levels, right? Now, if you take a look at this picture, these are the flight level 1, 2, 3. Maybe one question pops up. What is in your organization, your flight level 1, flight level 2, flight level 3? I mean, this looks quite easy. In reality, it's not so easy to figure this out, right? Because there's one thing, we should not fall into the trap and use this as an org chart. This is not an org chart, right? We could use it quite easily. We could identify, as an org chart, I mean, we could identify our flight level 1 teams quite easily because these are all the teams, right? We maybe even have something like, I don't know, senior management, the C-suite, which is talking about strategy. So we have identified our flight level 3, and the rest is somehow all the departments and all the other things in between. This is not flight levels. The thing is, you can map your org chart to flight levels, right? So nobody says that it is not possible. However, most likely you should not do it because flight levels is not about the organizational structure. Flight levels is about the operational structure. So we want to map how we are actually generating and delivering value to the customer. That's what we want to uncover. So we totally have to detach from our org chart, right? And there is actually something what we are doing. So on Monday there's another workshop, and some of you actually attended probably the one on now Thursday, Friday, and will attend maybe on Monday. There's one day that we're investing in building what we call a work systems topology. And the work systems topology actually tries to figure out what are your flight level 1, 2, and 3 systems in your context, right? And that's actually quite important. And if you take a look at these topologies, they no longer look like this fancy poster. It's getting a little bit more complicated, right? Let's zoom in into one of these topologies actually and see what's going on here. So as you can see, the colors, they represent different flight levels, like the flight level 1, flight level 2, and flight level 3. And you see there's something happening like this, where two flight levels are merged together, as you can see here, right? There's also the thing, what we see actually quite often, that multiple teams need to work on different flight level 2 systems. So in the end, we need to spend or invest 1 or 2 brain cells to come up with a topology like this, but it's really worth doing, right? What does this topology tell us? Well, it's basically a map of our flight level systems in the organization. This means on each and every box here, sooner or later, we're going to apply the 5 activities. We're going to apply the 5 activities in the area of the lawyers, marketing, sales, business intelligence, core experience, and so on. So this is basically the landscape and the map of all your boards that you're going to build in your organization and how you're connecting them, right? So for instance, the core experience board is connected to the operational portfolio. So it just tells you, okay, there is work flowing between these 2 boards. There is work flowing between these 2 boards. That's actually a good keyword. I would like to zoom into the strategy and operational portfolio and into the dealer board. You can see there's also a connection between dealer and operational portfolio, and see how these boards are actually interacting with each other. So let's zoom in here a little bit, right? So the first board up here is the strategy and operational portfolio. This is this mixture of a flight level 1 and flight level 2 board. That's the actual board, because that's a real case what I'm presenting here. And the other one is the dealer board, which is, they're doing software for cars in the end. And we're talking about car dealers here, not drug dealers, right? So that's the board for the car dealers. And now let's see how these boards interact. We call this flight routes. So we need to build actually flight routes, how work is flying across our landscape of these boards, right? What I'm showing here is an example. This is an example how this organization is handling this topic, and it doesn't say that you have to do it like this. It's an example, right? You would need to come up with your own flight routes, of course. But how are they doing it? Well, what we see here on the company wall, they call this combination of flight level 3 and 2 a so-called company wall, right? In the beginning, like in front of the board, they are managing their strategy and their KPIs. So you have strategic information here and all the KPIs for the entire organization, right? Something like, I don't know, we want to enter the Latin American market and some KPIs around it, yeah? And a strategy how we are actually going to do it, because entering the Latin American market is just like a wish, a goal, right? And the strategy tells us, okay, how we're going to do it. Now the dealers, they take the strategy and the KPIs and they break it down for their product. So dealer is really a product for car dealers. So if the strategy is like, okay, we want to get into the Latin American market, the car dealers think about, okay, and what does this mean for us, right? How do we enter as a product the Latin American market? And they come up with cool ideas. And these ideas, they somehow put these ideas in a so-called canvas, right? A canvas is basically more or less a high-level description of what you want to do. That's actually how they are using it, right? So you need to have an idea of how long would it take, what is actually the idea, why are we going to do it. So it's basically a description. What is the potential return on investment, and so on, right? So they somehow try to sketch the idea. In this organization, a canvas could be delivered to the market in 2 days or in 2 years. So there's totally no time bound behind this. If you're having canvases in such a size, it's of course quite difficult, because 2 days to 2 years, that's really quite a range, right? So what they are doing now is they are generating initiatives out of the canvas. An initiative is something which can be delivered to the market within 3 months. So they're basically generating multiple initiatives, sometimes multiple initiatives, out of a canvas where they know, okay, we can have impact in the market within 3 months, right? These are the initiatives. Now, the Flight Level 2 system does not start to work on these initiatives. What they are doing instead is they are taking the initiatives up to the company wall, right? And not only this Flight Level 2 system, like this product, the dealer product is putting up the initiatives to the company wall. All the other products in the organization, all the other products in the organization are doing it as well. They are doing it because they want to have a competition. They want to have a competition of the best ideas, right? Maybe the car dealers have good ideas, the OEM have good ideas, the segment of customer, like end customers, have good ideas. And the thing is, we want to compete all these ideas, and we want to select those who we want to deliver to the market across all the products, right? Usually, there are also coming some great ideas in from the side, like our lawmakers have always great ideas in terms of regulations and stuff like this, right? Data protection laws and whatever. So they, of course, compete together with all the other initiatives here on the Flight Level 3. So they have a so-called strategy planning. That's how they call this. And after the strategy planning, we know, okay, these are the 3 things or things that we want to deliver to the market. What's going on next? Now, the Flight Level 2 systems pull these initiatives down to their Flight Level 2. Yeah? So it's not a push system. We don't push it from the Flight Level 3 to the Flight Level 2, but they pull it in whenever they have capacity. And pull is quite important because the Flight Level 2, remember, there was this activity of create focus. They are creating focus. So you cannot push it because they need to finish something before they can start working on a new initiative, right? And that's the reason why we need to establish a pull system here. So they pull in the initiative from the Flight Level 3. And now an initiative is something worth of 3 months of work. That's quite big for teams. So what they are doing is they are splitting it. They are splitting it into epics. So now they are splitting the initiatives into epics on the Flight Level 2 system. Epics in this company is something which can be done within, let's say, 3 sprints or so. It's still quite big, cannot be finished with 1 sprint, but it can be done in 1 to 3 sprints, right? So now we have epics. Now the team board kicks in. Now the teams pull in the epic into their Flight Level 1 system, the team system, and they generate stories out of the epics. And now the team actually is working on this epic, which can be traced back to the initiative, which can be traced back to a strategic outcome in the end. So this is how we somehow create flow across the entire organization. That's again the flight route, what I've just sketched, but without the board. Because usually when you start with flight levels, you don't have all these boards, right? So we come up with a representation like this to illustrate what's going on. And yeah, this is a flight route. And the thing is, this is just one flight route. Usually an organization has multiple of these flight routes, right? Because this would be a flight route for a new feature idea, right? But, well, the company is not only new features, the company is doing multiple things. Maybe there is a defect somewhere. Where in the company do we start to handle the defect? Is this just a team thing? Is this a strategic kind of thing? Hopefully not, yeah? Or what about business as usual? Where does this go to? So the idea is that we define multiple flight routes for multiple let's say, requests or triggers, like different work orders we have in our organization. And the interesting thing is, when we see a flight route like this, we can derive a pattern out of it. So this is like a line, what we see here. You see, it's just like how the flight route goes. And what we can do now is, we can actually make it even a little bit more abstract and just take a look at the line. And if I have a flight route like this, what does this tell me? This tells me somehow that in our organization, it is possible that new ideas are being generated on the flight level 2. This means if the flight level 2 is something like products or services, this means we empower our product delivery units that they can come up with their own ideas. It does not start here. It starts here on a flight level 2, right? However, it goes up to a flight level 3 here. We need to ask, why does it go up? So I already gave you the answer. The answer here was because they wanted to compete it between all the other great ideas that are going on. So they want to avoid sub-optimisation, yeah? But we need to know why it's going up, and then it's going down again, right? And we can draw actually this for this pattern for each and every flight route. So this is another flight route pattern, what we see. What does this mean? Work starts somewhere on the flight level 3, and it goes from top to down, right? So that's a typical top-down flight route. And here's the thing. That's maybe not bad. It's maybe a good thing, right? Because, maybe we're working on a lot of strategic kind of things. But here's the thing. If we only see flight routes like this, they always start here, and then they go down. They always start here, and then they go down. This means up there are some very, very smart people who actually know what the entire organization has to do, right? So if we only see flight routes like this, that's not a good sign, right? This means there's no empowerment of the organization. Everything is somehow centralized on the flight level 3, which is usually the playground of the top management. So the point is, a flight route is neither bad nor is not bad or good. It depends. It's the mixture of flight routes we need to see, right? So if we only see this, that's bad. But if we see something like this as well, that's a little bit better. I mean, it looks like they're dead, right? But they're not dead. This company is not dead. What we see here is that the teams can actually start with work and can finish work and don't have to include anything in the anyone else in the organization. So this could be, for instance, business as usual. This is just like stuff we have to do. This could be, for instance, small quality issues, incidents, bugs, or something like this, right? We just do it right away. The question is, could it be also something else? Like, for instance, a cool idea. Do we empower teams that they can deliver ideas to the market? Yeah? If yes, we need a flight route like this, and we need a trigger here which tells us new features or new ideas, and they go directly to the market, right? So, good thing. What about this flight route? This means actually work can be started somewhere on the flight level 1, and there is a way that this work somehow ends up on flight level 3, which is usually a good thing, because this means teams can somehow bring up their ideas to the flight level 3, and on the flight level 3, we probably can make a company priority out of it. That not only this team is working on it, but multiple teams are working on it, right? I've seen it so often. We have these hack days. Do you know hack days, hackathon, and these kind of things? So teams are hacking around, coming up with great ideas, and then the hackathon is over, and they just continue with what they've done before, right? So it would be cool if we have a hackathon that there's at least some way like this where we can make sure, okay, and now this becomes a company priority, right? So again, it's all about discovering, do we actually have a way? Because in many agile transformations, I hear it, okay, we empower our teams. Nice, but how are we doing it? exactly in terms of how we are collaborating together, right? Yes, and this is another pattern. I mean, you can imagine there are many patterns. This would be like, okay, I as a product, I can take autonomous decisions and I do not have to include a flight level 3 or something like this. I have my own budget or whatever, which I can just spend, and deliver stuff to the market. So these are the flight routes and the flight route patterns. And I think it's really a quite important thing to think about this, because agility is more than only a team thing. We somehow need to make sure that work is flying across the entire organization, right? And that's what we are exactly doing here. All right, and I think that, this is somehow all the components that we have now in the room, which actually tells us what flight levels is. So when organizations are doing flight levels, what they are doing is they are applying these 5 activities: visualize the situation, create focus, establish agile interactions, measure progress, and improve on 3 different levels in your organization. That's the core, actually. If we want to figure out what the 3 levels are, we need to build something what we call a work systems topology, and we also need to define flight routes which tell us, okay, and how is this work now flying across the organization. And, well, I hope this somehow answers the question, what are organizations doing when they are doing flight levels? That's what they are doing. And that's everything I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Klaus.
Thank you, Klaus.